Nothing much at all was going on in the ravine from April through May through June. And then one day I was astonished to find right by the road on my way to the ravine, just a mile from the ravine, wonder how many times I've driven past this without noticing it. This one's been cut. This is actually a good thing because it means it didn't just fall from somewhere above. Someone had to relocate it and hoist it up onto this sapling so that the whole thing stood up like this. The very next house down, this one here, and it's pretty much been abandoned. We might know why. And just down this same road a piece, my friend Sarah was feeding this person's dog and was driving down here and heard loud footsteps up on this ridge. She couldn't see through, but heard the footsteps even though the car was running.
I heard walking, rustling like in leaves as I was driving down. So I backed up and I kept hearing the rustling going across the ridgeline like a human walking through leaves. So I turned the car off and I hung out and I heard about 10 to 12 more steps of the shuffling and then it just stopped and I got a little scared and I left.
Now we're in the backyard of the house. What do you think?
I think you're weird.
I think you're right. Okay, now we're way at the bottom of the hill in the backyard. And we're about to cross over into the woods here. Never been here before. Interesting, huh? This is a nice kind of woods. Honey, you remember. It's been years since we've gone out together looking for Sasquatch. I'm proud of you. Honey, are you proud of yourself? Kind of perched on the top of that. See what happens. Let's see what happens. I like this woods a lot. So we had those isolated percussions through the dark of the night, but in the first hour or so of dawn, the energy picked up substantially. The recording that we got during the night seems to me a pretty clear indication that there was at least one Sasquatch knocking around here. So I've come back to poke around, see what we can see. A couple hundred yards that way is where my friend Sarah heard the footsteps. A couple hundred yards that way is that structure by the small dirt road. So I think we're in a good spot here. Here's one of those cases where we have a bunch of tree liens going in the same direction. Some of them are pretty parallel and stripped of bark. Here's another kind of thing you like to see. A fallen tree, normal, normal, normal. Nothing to see here, folks. Keep moving. And then you get the root system on top of nothing. So this didn't fall from a tree above because these are roots. And where did the roots go? Nothing but flat ground. Either it was ripped out of the ground and placed here, kind of balancing on this boulder, or it was found and taken here and balanced on this boulder. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Here's a fallen tree. Do-do-do-do-do. This seems to be the same tree. This first part ends right here against this one. And this balanced, very well balanced, crossing over itself, its original self down below. And as if that weren't enough, here's yet another one coming down through, crossing through this to create a kind of a weave. Looks like it was growing here, but it's become part of this little system. This is what really gets me. Across, and you'll often find them pretty well balanced. And this one broken off, but there's no obvious place for it up above. Gotta take my word for it, I guess. It comes down in pins, or wishbones. Not one sapling, but two. Coming up, and they cross underneath here. Held in place by this guy. Zoop. And this brings us right back to the original structure, the most obvious one, and right by the road, as if perhaps to let the young ones know, hey, here's a human passage. Better hold up and be careful. Music man? Hello? Are you the one over behind the brick house? Is that a knock? Are you the one over behind the brick house? Is that a knock? So that actually was a subtle yet distinctive reply. I find I constantly have to recalibrate my own awareness of their level of awareness and just how conscious and subtle and responsive they can be. You know, you never can quite stabilize that frame of reference because it's just so hard to grasp, but you have to continue to give yourself a talking to about just what kind of counterpart you are dealing with. Have some good food for you. I made this nice little structure. I fully did not expect this. Only part of this is here. And they did it without disturbing this, it looks like. God, I'm so excited. It's definitely a Sasquatch eating that popcorn. There's no other explanation that I can think of. I bought this nifty little camera that has night vision, and it doesn't go very far, just like 8 or 10 feet. But I'm going to set it up near the popcorn and just hope that he'll do the same thing that he did the other night. Bad news, and it's been like a gut punch for me. I put out a night vision little camera and found out that the culprit had been raccoons. You can imagine what that moment was like. You know, at first your mind just kind of like goes to the extreme, and your emotions take the express elevator to the basement. And you think, well, okay, well then the whole thing is nullified, and you have to go back to the drawing board, start from scratch. But then I started thinking, well, now wait a minute. I felt like Jimmy Stewart. I go like, well, now hold on just a minute here. Now, well, those raccoons, they didn't make all that percussion. In fact, here's a drum riff that I recorded earlier in the evening, one of those 2 times that I filmed the raccoons. And then there's the matter of this branch that was added to the structure that I made. I don't remember putting that one on here. I find I constantly have to recalibrate the level at which they can really play cat and mouse with me. Unless it turns out that coyotes and raccoons make percussion and relocate sticks, then I have been a fool once again. But a fool who is not wrong about the presence of Sasquatch. All through the night leading up to the taking and eating of the popcorn, my recorder picked up this behavior. So, yeah, I'm thinking, now wait a minute here. They must hang out together, the Sasquatch and the raccoons. Just like Sasquatch hang out with coyotes. Sorry, okay, I'll stop. And this, maybe 150 yards down from the brick house, is this old road. And look what we have over the top of it. This arch going directly over the top of it and held down by a whole bunch of debris. But in any kind of scientific or even quasi-scientific enterprise like I'm trying to undertake here, you get curveballs thrown at you by nature. Nature is always more tricky and, slippery than you think it's going to be. And so it's encouraging to think that this experiment here is in the fine, long tradition of experiments over thousands of years that have tried to get a tighter and tighter fix on what is really going on. Something that makes me feel hopeful that there might be recent activity here at my house is that this tree fell in a storm a few months ago from there, and it's being taken apart. Look at all these limbs of it, all separated, strewn about. That wouldn't happen just from it falling down. All these are topped off, and look at all this. And much of it has been debarked. There's a long old logging road, goes back there for miles. Undeveloped forest, a nice pond back there. Look at that thing. It's a demolition site. Reminds me of a little piece of video I did years ago. A link may exist to the wood-eating behavior of the mountain gorilla. A recent study by Cornell University primatologists reveals that wood is a crucial source of sodium. In fact, 95% of the gorilla's salt intake is derived from this source, which makes up just 5% of the bulk of their diet. And here is my tree lean situation right next to it. How could this happen randomly? I thought this was done several years ago, and it may have been. I had just started getting seriously into Sasquatch research 9 years ago, and the food we left out was never taken. But it was right next to a pretty obvious tree bend, pinned down. Over the years there'd be some sporadic activity, but it really came to a head in 2012. My daughter just found this stuffed squirrel up in our apple tree. Neither of us recognize it. It seems dry and not all ratty and old. If it's a potential gift, I guess we should take it and put something else in there. In its place, we're going to put this wonderful little monkey animal who has volunteered. Okay, you got that. Good. Oh, honey, we're happy with this wonderful squirrel.
But we won't have the monkey anymore.
Well.
But if we give him that and he finds it, then he'll give us another thing.
That's right. It'll go on and on, right? Well, this is pretty interesting. I just discovered that my antenna is down inside here. I don't know how it will get. It's lodged in here. I just noticed this as I drove down my driveway, which is only 0.2 of a mile. And the strange part is that in an hour and 20-minute round trip of driving my daughter to school this morning, I didn't notice it at all, even though it's very remarkable. So I would definitely have noticed it, and it wasn't there, so it had to have occurred while I was home between 8:30 and just now, around 2 o'clock. And I've been at my desk the whole time in between. I was just parked up here working up inside there, not looking out any of the windows. Nobody else was home those 5.5 hours. And it takes a lot to get that down in there. See, already I feel like I'm going to snap it. I don't want to push it any farther. This one here didn't grow here. It goes up that way. This big one didn't grow here either, it seems. These two did. They all go up to converge at the top. Really come right together. And then right behind it, or next to it, oh! There's one of these typical wishbone situations lying here. And then you have this teepee set up. And they converge at the top too. And this one didn't grow here. This one didn't grow here either. Put up, brought here and used in the configuration. And then you have another one right there. Parenthetically, I wanted to mention a little language of mushrooms that seems to be going on. A couple weeks ago, I found right here in the crook of this wishbone a full white mushroom, like this long, with its top completely intact, not nibbled by anything. It was just leaning right on here. I didn't have this camera with me right then, so when I remembered to come back and get a shot of it, it was completely gone. It hadn't fallen off, it's nowhere on the ground. And this was obvious. This was bright white and gleaming at me, and it's not anywhere. And then, more recently, right here by my house, on the path leading to the backyard, right in the middle, I find this. Just laid here. Did squirrels eat and carry mushrooms around? And then just this morning, now that I'm attuned to this signage, I would have noticed it. Right on my front stoop just appeared this little one. During the same time period, just as I was noticing these potential mushroom gifts, an opposite sort of signal seemed to be sent. You remember there were two kind of teepee structures converging at the top. This one and this. Whoops! I just found out that this is down. So I don't know when this happened. These were the two that were growing here, and they've both been yanked out. Music Man, why did you do this? Seems like a mixed message between this push down and the mushrooms. Or maybe it's two different individuals with conflicting outlooks on the interaction that's going on here. I swear to God, I don't know how to handle this. This is unfreaking believable. Look what I just came up to put out the recorder. Oh my God. This is unreal. This is like one of the most surreal, stunning things I've ever seen. This is not the same, not even remotely the same mushroom as was here before. That was shaped pointy at the end and small. It's unbelievable. My heart almost stopped when I saw that. I left the recorder right here by the structure and picked up catching glimpses of her is like trying to catch glimpses of him. I didn't tell her about what just happened because she'd be bored by it. She's in between childhood wonder and adult recapture of childhood wonder.
No, I'm trying to do it. I'm expecting
3, 2,
No, then I'm expecting it.
70, 69, 68.
I'm pretty sure that Scratch is real. I just don't care.
I got this little camera here to try to roughly match the size and shape of the recorder, to be as unthreatening as possible. You know, let me just discuss this with you for a second. If you're leaving mushrooms at my house and setting up structures and pushing down structures and making your drumming sound, then I know you're there, and you can just watch me all you want through the windows at night. You can just feast your eyes on me and my daughter all you want. You've probably been watching us for years over there. So I did learn my lesson last year, and I'm not going to try to hide a camera, because that was not neighborly of me. But I'm going to, not today, I'm not going to stick it here all of a sudden today. I'll let this sink in, but I'm going to leave the recorder that you're used to, and then this little box, and I'm going to ask you to do me a favor of just letting me see you a little. We kind of have a very unequal relationship. For Pete's sake, music man, I think we should bring our thing to a new level where we know what we're dealing with and whom we're dealing with. Not just through sounds. It can still be indirect because I won't be here when you show yourself. To test this, I left it in my side woods. I obtained this little guy. There was no food on the camera. He was just curious. And again, I didn't hide it. It was just laid out in full view. So this is no trick. At least think about it, okay? You could ask me for a favor in return. Remember, last summer, just a little bit over a year ago now, I got a picture of one of you, probably not you, probably one of your family members. And he or she was right in front of me while I was filming. And nothing bad happened. I got a look at him or her. You're still safe. 2 days ago, I was sitting in my usual spot, and about 100 feet away, nothing was going on. It was completely silent. And then I just happened to be looking in a specific direction, and between two trees, about 100 feet away, I just saw a very, very dark brown, just patch of color go between the two trees. Now, I'm not saying I know that it was him, but it remained completely silent after that. I kept looking down there and didn't see anything, and I didn't hear a darn thing. No deer walking, no squirrel sound, no bird, no woodpecker. And it wasn't on the ground level, it was up a little. Not super high, but it was up off the ground. That's normally the boundary there. So I'm pushing it here a little. And that's his area, at least historically. I haven't heard him here for a while. You're probably saying, but didn't you learn your lesson last year about leaving a camera down there? Yes. It's still ego-driven and selfish, but I'm not hiding it. I'm being above board. I'm appealing to him, person to person, and just making a request and not trying to trick him. I'm being honest, 100% honest, unlike last year. From down inside his area, all I got for 6 hours was the sound of departing geese. While filming the barricade, I did get old Mr. Trickster. And stared at the site of last year's footage for 6 hours. Just coming back to pick up the cameras and didn't think anyone was home. But I just made my and got kind of a loud knock / tree push from up there. Woo! I heard that. We have one possible vocalization. And a few minutes later, a definite knock. That one little knock was enormously important in this new phase of the experiment, because it means that I'm not wrong in trying it up here on the top of the ravine or near the top. I have this sense that the lower tier, where I've been setting up for the past few years, is kind of off limits now in a way. It seems like they feel or they know that the heat is on down there due to my behavior, and that up near the top it seems like it might be cooler. Right behind where I put the camera in this upper level is where I heard the very clear tree push knock kind of commotion of a big wooden nature a few days ago that I didn't manage to get on camera. And so hearing that one knock and that possible vocal is a real confirmation that I might be on the right track trying to leave the camera up here. It's amazing, but they really do parse the space and the boundaries and the territory just that precisely. It's that vital to them, what happens here versus what happens here, whose kind of area this is versus this. I think that Music Man, I still identify him with down lower in his usual spot, whereas the one that has made noise up here at this upper level, I don't think is Music Man, because he doesn't have the same percussion signature. Next time I place the camera right up where I heard that commotion. Look at this darn thing. Didn't grow here because there's a rock right here. And there's no tree above this for it to fall from. Nothing that thick at all. Okay. Here's the unit, and here's approximately what it's looking at. A nice vista. The great thing about these cameras is that once I set them, they're off for, well, in this case, 17 hours until it's scheduled to come on. So it's just nothing, 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 all afternoon, all evening, all night long, hour after hour, and then the sun comes up. I watched and listened to 4 hours, and then I heard this knock. I set up the second camera about 50 yards lower down the ravine a little bit, and it did not hear the same knock. So that tells me that it came from up here on top. I watched and listened for 2 more hours and heard nothing further. Which includes this big piece of woodwork down there, or woodcraft. Just looks like it's had some work done. And right up from here is this horizontal floater, as I like to call them. This spear through that comes down and rests on here, which is part of the floater. And then right behind it, even though this isn't a pine tree, it's a maple or something like that. We have this pine tree top deposited in here. There's no pine tree above it. Well, this may be a pine tree, but this is not the same kind of branches. This has spindly little branches going far up. But the fact that this is in here, right opposite something quite clearly placed there, is exciting to me. This here reminds me of another segment hanging that I found very nearby. I will keep playing these little games here by my house. I'll keep listening to Music Man as his personality and style seem to change over time. And I will be watching hour after hour and day after day, as 99.9% of the time there's nothing to see or hear. I remember the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But that's where I am right now. I hope not insane, but just at the stage of wanting to see them. I want to see them. If not Music Man, then somebody. Somebody.